MiniWarGaming's Beat the Cooler Bat Rep!
Ork's turn 3 begins, and he rolls to get his other flyers in. They do not show up, and so now he's forced to have to move around his flyers, see where he can figure out where he wants them to go. And of course, Dan has to debate a little bit about what he wants to do with these planes, and he just can't decide what he wants to do. Now, normally we edit all this out, but for this point, I wanted to see how long it takes Dan to figure out where he wants to fly. No, I'm just kidding. He flies off the board, and the rest of the flyers, they come in going after my Trigon because he could not get a good line of sight with the other flyer as well. So it's closing in. Doesn't really matter how close it is in the end, but closes right in. The other flyer, it also flies off the board, and then Ghazghkull and his Mega Knob buddies move over because they're going to try and fight the Doom. These Ork warriors, they run back, trying to get a little bit further away from the Trigon, but they know it's hopeless. They're not going to escape it. And they do their psychic check on 3 dice. He does pass and ends up getting nothing, I believe, from his psychic ability. Nothing useful anyway. The Shadow or the Doom's brain sucking abilities kick in, and he does a wound and wounds one of the Mega Knobs. The Mega Knobs now fire away with their rockets and their shooters. Apparently they have different ballistic skills, Ghazghkull and the regular guys, or at least that's why I think he rolled 2 sets of dice. I don't ever know with Dan. Anyway, the other boys shoot, aiming at the Trigon, and they actually do a wound to it, so it takes a wound. And now the super shooter starts firing away at my warriors, who they'll get cover saves because a few of them are behind the wall there, or one of them is, but he fails it and dies. And the other ones, they go down to 1 wound on one guy. This super shooter decides to shoot at the other Trigon, firing away, hitting on 3s, re-rolling, wounding on 4s, I believe, maybe even 5s on these guys, because this one's pretty tough. But I make all my saves, so nothing happens there. And now he begins to charge, which he easily makes a distance. And now we made a mistake here because we were going to be pretty specific, but then we realized afterwards that you can't get within an inch of a unit. You're going to charge a unit other than what you're charging, unless you declare a multi-char or multi-saw, which he didn't. And we also realized that he was within an inch of the spore pod, but we just adjust that a little bit because why bother calling that out? And so the rest of the knobs move in, and the fight begins between them. Doom does get to go first. He gets 2 hits and 2 wounds. These are, of course, against Ghazghkull. See if I can get a wound. But here's Ghazghkull and his buddies attacking, and tons of hits, tons of wounds. And I actually fail by 1 invuln, and he would have lived. So the Doom goes down, he dies, and the Orks get to overrun, or they get to do their consolidation a few inches. The warrior fights on against the unit of knobs there. He misses all of his attacks. He does get the 1 reroll because he's got 1 set of talons, but he dies right away. And the knobs continue rampaging all over the place. So things are not looking good for the Tyranids, but we still have 2 Trigons, and we're seeing, but the Carnifex does not come in yet. So that's unfortunate, but the Trigons are here, and now they can charge. So he moves up. He failed his regen, so he did not get his wound back. The warrior moves around with his 1 wound left. This Trigon shuffles a bit, and the spore pod whips Ghazghkull and his friends there, getting 4 hits and a few wounds, but he makes all of his armor saves. The Trigon now shoots with all of its shots there, trying to see if I can do another wound or 2. And he does actually kill one of the knobs, which is certainly good to see. And now the charge begins, I believe. I charge the warrior first, so it takes the hits, and then I charge the Trigon in. And I charge the other Trigon in, they get to stand and shoot, but we know they're not going to kill it, so I just moved it up already. And they fail to do any wounds. Now the close combat begins. The warrior attacks, and he gets 2 wounds, and actually kills one of them right away, because he does not get saves against my power weapons, and does like 2 wounds to Ghazghkull. But then the Trigon attacks. It's got a whole bunch of attacks, and it's wounding on 2s so that I get to re-roll. Or no, wounding on 3s, because this one's pretty tough. And kills the other guy, and then he has to make 4 invulns, but he fails 3, and Ghazghkull dies. So another point for the Tyranids. The warrior and the Trigon then get to make their consolidation. The warrior runs, trying to hide a bit behind the Trigon. The other Trigon now, he moves and just kind of shuffles back a little bit into the difficult terrain, deciding to get ready because those knobs are coming, and he's going to kill them all because they only have a 5-up. I mean, he shouldn't make them all. And now the fight begins between the other Trigon and the Orks, but this isn't much of a fight. It's more just the Trigon gets to eat a bunch of them. And so he loses 6 or 7 right off the charge, and then he gets to make his little counterattack. But the weird boy doesn't do any wounds, and then the rest of the boys, they move in. They have a lot of attacks, and they get a few hits, but they don't do really anything. They fail their leadership, and then they're easily overrun by the hulking monster that is a Trigon. And so those orcs are gone. Trigon gets to consolidate and he starts heading back towards the fight, knowing that he's going to have to fight those Mega Knobs. So stay tuned for part 4 and see how this ends.